continue a series that we started this week called Because I Said So on the weekend and here on Daily Time with God, where we're studying some passages that highlight how Jesus showed up in the marginalized, the overlooked 2,000 years ago. So hopefully that's been a fun conversation, helpful for you so far. And we got a great passage to look at today. Looking forward to being able to do that with you as well. Lisa has a new network adapter. We're 1-0. So I think it's gonna be a great day.
It feels good. Yeah. So we'll just see what happens. You know,
it's also,
I would rather we just not talk about it.
No, we're gonna keep talking about it. It's also like a staff breakfast day, which honestly, Lisa and I don't know what that means today, but it will be happening.
We know what breakfast means. We know what staff
right.
means.
Yeah.
Don't know what it's gonna look.
It will be happening right outside of Lisa's office. So if we go, probably, I'm guessing anywhere near 9 o'clock, Lisa, you're gonna watch her get frustrated.
And I didn't close my curtain, so I'll have
great.
all the onlookers.
Yeah, the shenanigans will be. Maybe that'll help them though, because they'll like realize, you know.
Oh, it doesn't. They stare at me and make faces and try to distract me from what I'm doing. Yeah.
They do it because they love you. I'm sure that's what it is.
I'm sure that's exactly right.
So, well, hey, good to see you again, guys. Every day we start with kind of a question of the day. And the question today doesn't have to even be one you've owned, but just like, what has been your favorite car and why?
Oh, well, that changes things. I don't know if it would be my favorite. Okay, so in high school, I really, really liked looking at the Dodge Viper.
Oh, those are cool cars.
I thought that was just a great car.
Yeah.
But my favorite car that I've owned that I saved up for and had to have a real girl job was my Honda Civic. It was a 2-door, silver. I bet it was 2002.
Nice.
Brand new. It was the only new car that I've ever had. Manual shift, transmission. Oh, I loved that thing so bad.
That's a fun car.
Yeah.
I did a lot of work on those cars in high school.
Yes. And I didn't do anything crazy to it, right?
Like a lot of work. Like
it was nothing fancy.
On the Civics were the car you did stupid stuff to.
Yeah.
That was.
And when I got pregnant, Anthony was like, "You can't drive a 2-door anymore. I'll drive the Civic. You drive my Toyota Corolla."
What year was that one?
2005. It was newer than mine, but
no, that's good. You know, something. Well, the reason that I asked this question, so we take the kids on like date nights. So Alyssa will get a couple. I'll take a couple each month, but it's one-on-one. And so last night, Maisie and I had a date night. And so I took her to Park Meadows and I got her a Lego set and Chick-fil-A. But what she didn't know is I had scheduled a test drive of a Tesla Model 3 for the two of us to go on. And so she was like, "Oh, that was a fun date night." And I was like, "Oh, I got one more thing for you," because she had done a school project and I looked at it last week and it said like, "What's your favorite car?" And she just put Tesla. And I said, "Sweetheart, have you ever been in a Tesla?" And she's like, "No, they just seem really fancy." So that was why I did it. And cards on the table, I really like Tesla, which is why Alyssa thinks that Maisie likes Tesla, which is totally possible. Also, it's awesome. So that's probably a part of the reason.
I mean, she is just an amazing little girl.
Yeah. But the place that I bought my Leaf 3.5 years ago has literally just been like, they call me, they send me stuff. They're just like trying to buy my car back from me for literally more than I paid for it.
No.
And, and the number keeps going up. And so I might be close to trading it up. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. But
wow.
It was super fun. We got to drive it around and mess with the essentially iPad on your dashboard. And it had like all the features, even the ones you wouldn't necessarily pay for yourself. So it was cool. I was like, "Watch, Maze, it's driving itself." And she's like, "No, don't do that." So it's pretty fun. So anyway, I like Tesla. My buddy's got a Model X. That's like the super high end one.
Okay.
But I'm a technology guy. So those cars to me just feel like you're driving a giant piece of technology.
Yeah. My dad's cousin has one early on, but they were going out for dinner. And so they were at my dad's cousin's house and he was like, "Hey, let me just get the car." And he just like clicks, things on his phone and the car drives up. And my dad and mom were like, "What's happening?"
Yeah. The Corolla didn't do that for Anthony?
No, unless I was driving it.
Well, that's fair.
He's like texting me.
Yeah, summon. That's good. Let's see what our friends have to say here. Greg, good morning. Good to see you, sir. Favorite car, I suppose, is my current one, the Audi Q5. That is a sweet car.
Yes.
Favorite vehicle is the KTM 1290 Super Adventure motorcycle. Yeah, That sounds fun.
I don't know those things, but I bet it's really cool.
Yeah, I can't ride a motorcycle if I want to stay married. So good work. It's awesome. Liz, good to see you too. Pam, good morning. Good to see you. Ron, good morning. Would say I always wanted a Corvette. Have not had one. Today, my Mustang for sure. Though it is tough or something. It
Maybe
is
not a Corvette.
What's that?
Maybe he's saying like though it's not a Corvette.
Oh, though there you go. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and I mean your Mustang's sweet. Who's got the Corvette?
Dom,
that's right. That car.
If they're not there now, they're on their way or something like that. They're going to the Corvette convention.
Yeah, in the Northeast, dude. Yeah. That car is ridiculous.
He's driven Anthony in it. I've never gotten to ride around.
It is. You feel like you're in a race car.
Yeah, that's what
on the street. And like, I don't know about you, nobody really like looks over at me in my car when I'm driving around. I was like, oh my gosh, is that a 2018 Leaf? Ooh, And so in his car, if you're at a stoplight, everyone's
looking.
It was weird actually test driving the Model 3 because the same thing happened. Like you get places and people look at you and they don't have like temp tags. There's no way you would know that it's like a test drive car. They think, oh, this is your car. And I just wanted to be like, I'm just test driving it. But I did not. Crystal, good to see you. Glad you're here. Alyssa, I like drove it back to our house. And Alyssa was like, I just assumed you'd bought it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would never do that. First of all, like never without, we talked about it, but like never without us agreeing to it.
Right.
And it's like a 6-month wait. So even if I had like signed on the dotted line, you ain't seeing it for a long time.
Oh my goodness. So you went like on a drive.
Yeah. It's crazy actually. If you want to do like a fun thing, you should do it because you can book it through their like website and then you just show up and they like don't go on the test drive with you. They're just like, hey, here's the amount of these, like, a couple hours, like just do whatever you want. And so he like showed us the screen and stuff, but I had seen that stuff. So I was pretty familiar. And then you just started driving. It was super fun.
So fun.
And it's free. So, like little date night idea for you.
So Anthony would be on board.
Yep. Buffy, my bugs, 1971 convertible in high school. That car is
so good.
And the one I have now, although I did love my minivan. Minivans are nostalgic. There's a place for those. Greg, don't have to own it. Then make a Lamborghini, but it would be a one-shot deal. I'd never be able to get back out of it. Yeah, I mean, Greg, I feel like Lamborghinis are not made for humans as tall as you. That feels like it's just like, oh, where's Greg? Well, he lives in that car now.
I'd love to see like big guys like crunch into like tiny things. It just cracks me. I don't know. I'm sorry.
I saw a really big guy get inside of Dom's almost exact car like pretty recently. And I was like, that just seems so uncomfortable. Tex, good morning. Good to see you. Debbie, I love the original Mini Cooper. Such a fun car. I had a PT Cruiser convertible for my 50th birthday, which I really loved. Midlife crisis car. I mean, if that's your midlife crisis car, you're doing fine because it's a PT Cruiser. So, Kathleen, I had my own car once. I picked it out and it was an Oldsmobile, secondhand, but so beautiful. I named her Ruby. Nice. My mom drove Oldsmobiles for a long time, actually. That was
my mom had a Cutlass Supreme, but it was diarrhea brown. It was not my favorite with like plastic. I feel
like my mom and dad at one point both had Oldsmobiles, like in late 90s, early 2000s. Liz, good morning. I think my favorite car was my 2000 VW Jetta. Oh man, that's a fun car. It was white, stick shift, and really fun to drive. I was so bummed when I got rid of it, but it would literally shut off while I was driving, and I had an infant in my car. So yeah, feels like that's not ideal,
Not ideal.
But my buddy had, I think it was a 2001, and it was a stick shift Jetta, and those cars were so fun.
Anthony had a Jetta for a while too.
Yeah, I can see Anthony in the Jetta. That feels responsible. Yeah. Jay Peterson, have we heard from Jay before?
I do not believe
feels like the first time. Jay, what's up? Welcome. Glad you're with us. I'd like a Volkswagen Beetle. Well, if you're local, maybe you can talk Buffy into giving you a ride around. It's a fun car, and she drives it pretty quick.
Fun.
Yeah. Greg, I heard you get delivery on a Tesla until mid next year. Yeah, they're saying right now it's like January, February, depending on the model that you get.
Okay.
But it's a while. Like you've never had a lower pressure experience. They don't do commission. So the guy was like, he was a Wounded Warrior Project guy. So like you could see it on his shirt. He's a Tesla employee. He's been with them for like 4 years. And his vibe was like, hey man, like I'm cool to show this to you. But honestly, it was almost like, if you buy this, it's going to be kind of annoying for me. So just like test drive it and then bring it back whenever you want. Like that was totally the vibe.
Well, here's the deal. They don't have to sell anybody.
No, they're yeah.
Right?
Like, hey, do you want to see the coolest car you've ever been on the inside of? Cool. Like if you want to buy that, just let me know. But I feel like my work is done. Like kind of, yeah. Did it. 1969 4-door Cougar. That's cool. I don't think I can even picture what that car looks like.
Look it up.
All right. Good morning. Loved my Jeep Cherokee Laredo. First car I ever owned outright. Those are fun cars.
Yes.
Especially, is it like the 90s? I feel like there was a Laredo like that was kind of the like boxier one that I really like. That friend who had that.
And then
car.
they got the Liberty. The Liberty's pretty boxy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's true. That's way newer though.
Yeah.
There's the Cougar. That's a cool looking car.
Oh, I can get behind that.
That's a cool looking car, man.
Joseph, what color was yours?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe he's just saying like that's what he wants.
Oh.
You know.
Well, either way, what color?
Yeah. Pam, my TT Roadster is most fun. Though my hubby had 57 opera window T-Bird delivered my dream car. Oh my gosh. But had to return it as not in good shape. Oh, that sucks. If you get a Tesla, I won't make fun of you. I won't make as much fun of you. Just saying. I mean,
good to clarify.
That's a sliding scale, Buffy. It's fine. It's fine. I'll let you drive it though. If I get it, I'll let Buffy drive it for sure. Ron, Jay is my brother from Holland, New York. Well, welcome, Jay.
Oh, hey.
That's awesome. You got a great brother in Ron. I bet you're a great brother in Jay. He owes me a VW Beetle. Funny story. I don't have anyone in my life that owes me a car, so I want to hear that story. That's
right.
Morning. My favorite car was a used Honda Civic hatchback that I bought on my own right after high school. It was so cool and had an awesome sound system. I was proud that I saved enough money to purchase it on my own. That's amazing. Way to go. Crystal, I was stoked when I saved up and bought my dream car before I turned 30. I was so proud. I still absolutely love my FX35 and plan on having it till it dies, but I'm experiencing the letdown of realizing dreams of the life lessons. Well, and that's an Infinity, right? Like those cars are so good for a while. And then like, I mean, I feel like VW is kind of the same way. Like you get the first 75,000 miles, like no problems. And then all of a sudden nickel and dime problems for other cars are like $500 problems in those cars. So yeah.
My oldest daughter's favorite phrase right now is, it's really good till it's not.
Till it's not. Yeah.
She says it all the time. And I'm like, it works. It works.
I mean, she's right. Yeah. My favorite car is my Toyota Camry Hybrid. I would get 600 miles out of a tank of gas. My daughter has it out in California, which is good as gas is nearly $5 a gallon. 600 miles a tank. That is impressive.
Imagine.
That is impressive. I mean, I don't get gas, so I can't imagine actually.
Well, your other car gets gas.
Yeah. I get infinite miles to the gallon in my Leaf. So one time Tom asked me if you could have any car, what kind of car would you want? My answer was one with heated seats. He said that was not an answer. So my answer is my MDX Acura with heated seats. That's a fun car too. Yep. That's not what you drive now though, is it, Sherry? Is that what you drive? For some reason I thought she drove a Hyundai, but maybe I'm wrong. My dad is a big ex-football dude. LO, getting him in and out of small cars is work. He is not a fan of my FX35. I bet that's true.
Kristen's dad is a big guy.
Yeah, that's funny. Cutlass Supreme Brougham. Brougham? I don't know how to say that. That's great.
So fun.
Yeah.
And here's the funny thing. My mom traded in her Pinto for the Cutlass Supreme. So.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. And my dad had one of those Volkswagen trucks that just had the flatbed on the back. My parents had some fun times before I came.
This is the Cutta. That's a cool looking car.
Oh.
Cool. Look at that.
Yes.
Strong. Respect. Leslie, oh yeah, if it's something I don't have to own, then a 911 Porsche Carrera. That's a cool car. I almost bought a Porsche last year, but decided it really wasn't me. Plus, my kid wants to go to college, so kids are party poopers. Yeah, they really are.
I know, Leslie. A Porsche is for everyone. It's like diamonds.
I feel like you could pull off a Porsche, but your kids do want to go to college.
So. But I'm sure that your son wants to go to college.
Yeah.
So
Joseph's car,
probably the wise choice.
Green, by the way. Green. So I love a Tesla, but holy moly, are they pricey? Yeah, I'm looking at they have a Tesla Model 3 that's the standard range. That's the least expensive version. That's actually almost exactly the same price as my Leaf was. So that's something.
And if they're going to pay you,
bingo.
If you're going to earn money on your Leaf,
I mean, that's what we're talking
about. That's
yeah. Well, I should correct. It's just about the same amount of money as my Leaf MSRP. I did not pay that for my Leaf. I paid significantly less than that.
Yep.
That I should clarify that. You'll let me drive it? Oh my gosh, I'm like your sister. Buffy is like my sister. Absolutely. We have a brother-sister ribbing that we do back and forth pretty consistently, for sure.
Yes.
How do you know so much about cars? I spent a lot of time early in life on cars, a lot, an inappropriate amount of time and money as a high schooler on my car and other cars. And I had buddies that did all the engine tuning work. That was kind of their deal. And then I did all the technology, electronics, wiring, sound systems, video games in the glove compartment. I did all that work. So that's
the one that gets I can understand a lot of the
yeah. No, usually when I'm but then I had a PlayStation in the glove compartment with the screen. People are like, what did you have? Yeah, Fast and the Furious had just come out. It was
still processing that.
It was full tilt. It was not healthy. So this is intriguing. Does it do well in snow? I know it's in California now. Yeah. Amanda, oh my gosh, speaking of cars, I just went outside and my window was smashed. Oh my gosh, are you serious? No. Thankfully, I didn't have anything but kids' toys and Chipotle trash in there. This is my current favorite car. It's a 2018 Toyota Corolla. First time I bought a new car, and I love that it's white. I am so sorry that your car window got smashed into. Oh, Amanda.
I know that the smash and grabbers are all over out here right now.
It's crazy. I see it on Nextdoor all the time, and people are brazen about it. They'll have a camera on them, and they're just doing it. And I'm like, who keeps anything valuable in their car? First of all,
well, if you keep your garage door open,
door. Yeah, that's a good
the thing. And they can get in your glove box and take your identity. So.
That's a bummer. Well,
Enneagram 6 on.
Just full fear mode. Crystal, cooled seats is where it's at. On summer days, you can find me in my car with seat coolers and AC blasting. That's funny. I thought so. Santa Fe. Yep, there you go. Grand Cherokee for a while, which was excellent. That's a fun car. Sorry that it's rest in peace. Amanda and Chad have ordered a Model 3. People always think we must have spent $1 million on it. But it would have been the same price as we bought Chad's Tundra for. That's true. That's true. Christina, side note, Jason and I just test drove a 2021 Ram dually diesel truck, which will be our next vehicle. Crazy nice. Yeah, I was in a buddy's Ford F-150 Platinum yesterday, and it was like a spaceship. It was crazy. It did really well in the snow. Look at that. See, you got a little back and forth convo happening there. It's good. All right. Well, hey, this is taking a little longer in our story time today than usual. We are going to dive into our narrative. Thanks for joining us for it. Before we get started, though, Lisa, would you pray for us?
God, thank you so much for this time together. Thank you that we can reminisce and dream and just enjoy one another's company, even through a screen. God, I pray as we are reading today that you would just help us to see the way that Jesus pauses, the way that he stops what he's doing and spends time with the people that are around him, that he sees people where they're at, but he never leaves them the way that they were. We love you so much. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, everybody. So just a reminder, if you've missed any of the series or when we were in Proverbs or Romans before that or any of them, you can find them on our YouTube page. When we think about stories, this is kind of the flow that we're talking about. So you have exposition, like what's happening in the passage, the details of who, where, when, the kind of conflict enters, and then you have rising action or tension, where there's a problem to solve, there's a conflict, and then you have climax where there's multiple options. There's a point of decision that has to be made, and then falling tension, rising or lowering tension, which is usually where we find our application when we're reading biblical narratives. and then resolution, which usually is a precursor to whatever the next point of tension is. So that's how we'll think about our reading today. Today is actually a really unique narrative. You're going to see it kind of has like two narrative arcs in one. There's two different scenarios taking place. So I'm going to read through all of it as we've done this week, and then we'll kind of come back through piece by piece. Luke chapter 8, beginning in verse 40, Luke records it this way. He says, "Now when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. And falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying. As Jesus went, the people pressed around him, and there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. And though she had spent all her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, and immediately her discharge of blood ceased. And Jesus said, 'Who was it that touched me?' When all denied it, Peter said, 'Master, the crowd surround you and are pressing it on you.' But Jesus said, 'Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me.' And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him, and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, 'Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace.' While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, 'Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore.' But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, 'Do not fear, only believe, and she will be well.' And when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him except Peter and John and James and the father and mother of the child. And all were weeping and mourning for her. But he said, 'Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping.' And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called, saying, 'Child, arise.' And her spirit returned, and she got up at once. And he directed that someone should be given her to eat. And her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened." So like I said, we have really a couple different sections of exposition here. So in one sense, you have a super small narrative getting kind of worked in here. If we think about kind of narrative one, we'll call it, Jairus and his daughter, you're looking at verses 40 through the first part of 42 as a point of exposition. So, Lisa, what are some of the highlights of the exposition you see here?
Do you want to do context or anything?
Yep, for sure.
So let's remember where we were yesterday. This is one of the only times we're going to do this, where we're going to jump straight from one narrative to the one that comes right after it. So I really, 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 if you were with us yesterday, pay attention to similarities and things that you notice. Remember, yesterday Jesus was in a Gentile community and he was healing the man with the demon. Today he is back in Galilee and he is going to be spending time with two women, a little girl and a woman. So just kind of pay attention to those things, because as I was reading, I was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of good stuff here. Characters to pay attention to: Jesus, the crowd, Jairus, who is this ruler of the synagogue, his daughter, who's about 12 years old, the woman with the discharge of blood, and then his disciples are with him, and then some of Jairus's friends. And then we'll get into like the weepers and the mourners and then all that. But for now.
Right. Yeah. And obviously we have like kind of a couple scenes, right? So scene one is Jesus in the town with a crowd around him. They welcomed him. Jesus knew, like there's this thing that's taking place all the time in Jesus' ministry, where his disciples are always really impressed by how important he is and how people would always greet him this way. But Jesus always knew, like he knew the human heart, he knew our condition, and he knew that the same people that were super pumped that he was there were going to be the same people that were shouting, "Crucify him." And so this group of people was going to be really fickle. And somehow in the middle of it, right, he's extending love and compassion to them when this guy Jairus comes up to have a conversation. Now, tell me why in your mind it's most significant that it's highlighted that he's a ruler of the synagogue. Like, that's a detail we don't need in the story. Why do you think Luke gives it to us?
So I think there could be a couple reasons. I said, can you think back to yesterday where we're coming from? I also want you to look at the differences and the similarities between the two stories that we're going to read today. So between Jairus and his daughter and between the woman with the discharge of blood. So Jairus is a man. He is associated with the synagogue, and so he would have been well respected, a cultural, social elite to a certain extent. He would have been. He had a certain status that this woman would not have had, and I think it's interesting because oftentimes, and Luke actually doesn't paint the religious people quite as. In quite a negative fashion as maybe Matthew does, but usually when Jesus is interacting with the religious leaders, it is not in a positive way. And so here you've got a religious leader coming to Jesus, but not to challenge him, not to question him, not to raise doubts or to incite the crowd around him, but it really is out of complete and utter desperation. He is hopeless because his daughter, his only daughter, is dying, and he's probably at his wit's end. I'm sure that it doesn't say it here. We're going to see it with the woman, but I'm sure that they have taken her to the doctors, to the healers, to everyone else. I'm sure he's prayed over her. He's had all the synagogue folk come and pray over her. Nothing has worked. This is his last hope.
Yeah, and Ron commented similarly, right? He said, implored to Jesus, either he believed or he was testing Jesus. Well, yeah, I think that I think Jairus has a lot more in common with people today than we necessarily think. Like, I don't think Jairus, as a ruler in the synagogue, did not believe Jesus was the Messiah. Like that, not before this.
Right.
What he believed was nothing else worked. This is my daughter. I'll do whatever it takes. And I think that there's lots of people we interact with, especially I feel like families in crisis, when I'll sit down with them or interact with them. Usually I was at like a gathering for a neighbor a few weeks ago, and it was his birthday, and a whole bunch of people in our neighborhood were there, and most of them don't go to church anywhere. And as I was talking to several of them, in a couple cases, the reason they wanted to talk about faith, the reason they wanted to talk about Jesus is not even because they believed it's true, but because it was something that might work, and they were desperate because of some stuff that was happening in their family. And I think that that's where Jairus was. He was like, I just need something that works. Will this work? You're like, is this an option to save my daughter? Because I'll do whatever it takes. And if you have a child, I'm sure you understand that. Like,
what are the knots that Andy Stanley talks about?
Yeah, if you hear somebody that says, I'm not in church right now, I'm not ready for this, there's a third one.
Yeah.
There's a third one. Hold on, I'll find it.
But the not ready for this is really where we find Jairus here.
Right.
He was not prepared. I mean, there's no way, right, to prepare for your daughter, your young daughter to be dying. Even in a culture where that was not abnormal, you can see that he has not resigned himself to be okay with the situation that was going on.
Yep. Not in church, not going well, and not prepared for.
There it is.
So when you hear somebody say it's a faith conversation trigger, right? Like, hey, I don't have every answer, but like I have a relationship to a God and to people that really love and care for me, even when things aren't going well, even when I don't feel prepared for something. So, yep. And then we kind of jump into an interesting deal, right? Because what we would expect, if you've been with us Monday and Tuesday this week, is we would expect rising tension here. So we would expect, like, what is Jesus about to do? Is he going to respond? How is he going to get there in time? Is she going to be healed? But that's not what happens, right? In the following part of verse 42, it says, as Jesus went, like he was literally going, all right, let's go. Like, I'll help your daughter. The people pressed around him. And I am sure that Jairus is doing everything he can do to move those people out of the way, and at the same time still look like morally qualified to have Jesus help him.
Dignified, right?
And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and though she had spent all her living on physicians, could not be healed anymore. So this is, we could kind of call it context 2, right? So tell us a little bit about this part of the story.
Yeah. So I did a project on women and the way that Jesus interacted with women. I didn't get to study her in that one, but this is one of my very, very favorite interactions that Jesus has while he is doing his ministry. So you see this woman here. She is ostracized immediately from her culture because of this discharge of blood. So she has not done anything. It is something that is just, it's an illness that she has, and she's had it for 12 years. And so if you've struggled with anything like this, it is debilitating. It's exhausting. You are so tired all of the time, and you don't feel good. And this woman's been living with this for 12 years. But in today's culture, you can continue to engage. You can continue to be a part of your friend circles. You can go to church. You can be around other folks. She would have been considered unclean by their ceremonial standards, and so most likely this woman would have been completely ostracized from her community. For anyone to be around her, she would have made them unclean. And so we talked a little bit about unclean yesterday, right? With the guy with the demons. And so you look at this and you think, oh my goodness, she's spent all of her money trying to get well. She can't get well. If she had a family, she doesn't anymore because she can't be around them. If you look back at the beginning of chapter 8, you see that Jesus was so countercultural in the way that he interacted with women anyway. He had females that were around him. They were part of his ministry. They were, in fact, supporting his ministry in some cases. So being around women was not something that Jesus shied away from. However, a lot of rabbis did altogether. They didn't want to be around women at all because of the possibility that they might be having their period and then make them unclean. And so, I mean, this whole thing should not happen. And she knows better. That's the thing, right? She knows better. But what does she do? She is so desperate. So we just saw Jairus out of his desperation and hopelessness. Now we see this woman out of her desperation and hopelessness. She is going to do something that she knows she shouldn't do, but she's going to do it anyway on the off chance that this might be the one thing that will heal her.
Well, and you have this really unique kind of theological, cultural understanding that we talked about yesterday, which is that they believed she had done something wrong,
Yep.
or that her family had done. It wasn't just that like she was sick, it was that she deserved to be sick.
Yep.
So her taking the next step that she takes is an even bigger deal, right? Greg says, too bad we don't know, get to know if Jairus became a believer. Yeah, we don't have the answer to that question. Feels likely, but we don't know. So then like she comes up behind Jesus, right? This is kind of the rising tension part of the story, and touches the fringe of his garment, and then sort of like the narrative answers the question way faster than we would expect, and immediately her discharge of blood ceased. That's, if you think about this kind of narrative within a narrative, that's this rising tension point. We don't totally know what's going to happen yet. We know that she's healed, right? But she has like gotten really close to Jesus, right? And then the climax is represented here in verse 45 through 47. And so tell us a little bit about that point of climax here for the woman as she experiences healing, and finally kind of Jesus talks about it.
Yeah. So we've seen the word perceive before from Jesus when he was interacting with some of the Pharisees and scribes. They were thinking a few things, and he's like, yo, I can actually perceive what you're thinking. Why are you thinking that? But here he knows, he can feel in his body that something has happened and that power has gone out from him and healed somebody. And when he says, who touched me? I mean, I always go back, Phil, to when you were talking about God in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. Like, Jesus knew what happened.
Right.
He knew what happened, but he was giving this woman an opportunity to share her story. And you're like, Lisa, I feel like you said that before. I have, because your story is so powerful. And he is giving her an opportunity to use her story of life transformation in this exact moment. And people were all around, people who had known that she had to be pushed to the outside, to the fringe, that couldn't be a part of their community. She's going to get an opportunity to share with them exactly what happened. And I just think that that's such a neat thing that Jesus does, even though she's terrified.
Right.
But he's, beckoning her forward, and he's saying, hey, listen, lady, a good thing happened, and it is time for you to let folks know. And so she does. She knows that she's not going to be able to hide from this, and so she comes. And I think there's fear here, but I think it is that more of that reverent fear of Jesus. I would say maybe some fear of the crowd around her, because she knew she probably shouldn't be there. But just like Jairus did, she falls down before Jesus.
Right.
And then she declares what had happened and that she was immediately healed. I just can't, because the crowd at this point, they're just like bustling along and like maybe trying to get a glimpse of Jesus and like throw their baby at him and see if he'll bless it. But,
right.
This is different.
Well, and you wonder, was she scared of Jesus, or was she scared of the crowd around him, some of whom probably had like pushed her to the fringes of society,
right.
And so it's like that smelly homeless lady that's always on the corner, like, oh, here she is, now she's bothering Jesus. He's never going to come back if this is, who he has to deal with. All of that's getting layered in here. But one of my favorite questions that Jesus asks in his entire ministry is, who touched me? And the disciples are basically like, everybody, dude. Everybody. Like, look around. Like, Jesus is in a crowd. He's constantly being pressed in. And we've seen lots of scenarios where Jesus is just like in this mass of humanity, right? Nobody is socially distancing anywhere. He is just like, somebody touch me. And when they're like, everybody's touching you, he goes, yeah, but I felt power leave me for somebody. And that's when this conversation with this woman comes up, and it could have gone really bad for her, right? We have some understanding about the character and nature of Jesus, but they're just learning it. And so if Jesus had been like, well, you've made me unclean, that's actually that's a criminal violation. So I'm going to have the police come and get you. You're going to stand trial for this. Like that was
probably would have been stoned. I mean, just knowing who she was in society, and
all
she was a woman, like this may not have ended well for her if it had been anyone else but Jesus.
And if you think about it, really, we got two daughters in play, right? Jairus' daughter, who's off somewhere dying. And this lady, we don't think about it like she's somebody's daughter too.
Right.
And both of them are at the end of their rope, right? So then we get to, hold on. Robert said over on YouTube, Jesus, having given up his divinity to live as fully human, know what happened and to whom it happened when that woman touched him? Or was it a more general realization? It's a great question, Robert. Honestly, people debate over this. So there's a few aspects of the nature of Jesus. I think my understanding would be that Jesus was not just walking around as Superman. That he really did, he didn't count equality with God as something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, becoming obedient even to the point of death. So when Jesus shows up in moments like this and has divine perception or discernment, it's a spiritual gift empowered by the Holy Spirit in connection to the Father, just like you and I would have. Now, does it show up in a unique way because Jesus is without sin and he is fully God and fully man? Absolutely. But I don't think Jesus was just like walking through every situation, immediately knowing what was in everyone's mind every time. I don't think Jesus had the full expression of every spiritual gift all the time. Because if he did, in my opinion, like when Hebrews says he struggled and was tempted in every way that we are and yet was without sin, that's not true. When we're told that he grew and matured into a man, that's not really true, because he would have just kind of like popped out with all that stuff. So I don't know, it's kind of a complicated answer, but I just think that there is something to understand in the nuance of Jesus was modeling what it meant to abide in his Father and to be dependent on the Spirit in the way that we're supposed to with him and the Spirit. So I don't know, Lisa, if you have any other thoughts about that one.
No, I think that I think there are parts of Jesus where we see these glimpses of divinity, right? That he can perceive certain things. He could perceive the thoughts of the Pharisees and things like that. But also, I think that there is still that humanity that exists here, and he was willing to place himself underneath the Father's will, and we see that over and over and over in the way, especially the way that Jesus prays and interacts with God. So I think that was a great answer, and it was not a weird question, Robert. That was a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking it. Leslie, I love the faith she had that he would heal her. Yeah, I mean, And you don't know, right? Like if there was really like a sense in which you would go, okay, so is there, is there a tremendous amount of faith or is there a tremendous amount of desperation? And I think God can honor both, right? And maybe there's something that we're going to talk about that a little bit this weekend when Jesus heals blind Bartimaeus, and Jesus asked him a question, what would you like me to do for you? And I think, one of the tensions for us oftentimes is, unless we're in a crisis, we actually don't have a very good answer to that question. And so being willing to really introspectively look, and then when we talk to other people, not make the assumption about what they need, but ask them to. And then, listen.
What could be a fun study, Phil, is the questions that Jesus asks.
Sure. He asks a lot of them.
He asks a lot of questions, right? Like you just said with Bartimaeus, he also asks another guy, do you want to be well?
Right. Yeah. That's good.
I mean, he just asked such good questions, but I think this leads also into what Ron is saying here, that a lot of people were touching Jesus, but she is the one who touched him with, whether it was desperation or faith.
Right.
She was not necessarily trying to get something from him in the same way that maybe other people were, but she genuinely wanted to be healed.
Right. Yeah. And she had faith of some kind, right? Faith that he would heal or whatever, because in verse 48, he says, your faith has made you well, right? Yep. Whether or not that's like a salvific, she's on team Jesus now, or she was just like, I think this guy can do something that a decade plus of doctors couldn't, it's a thing. So all that's happening. She gets healed.
Wait.
Yeah.
Gotta pause here because Jesus calls her daughter. And you mentioned it earlier, that she had parents, but we have no idea where they were. We have no idea what kind of interaction she had with them anymore. For if she's living in near isolation, she probably hasn't been called anything for quite some time other than like maybe nasty words. And so here Jesus is not just calling her woman, which we see quite frequently. He is calling her daughter. He is giving her a new identity in this moment. And I think that is just so powerful. I mean, you talk about like two daughters, right? She was someone's daughter, and now Jesus is calling her daughter. So I think that's
well, and you see these like little glimpses in Jesus' ministry where he like lets people know, I'm not just a rabbi, right? And so, here you just have, it's always super calculated. It's all like, it wouldn't be completely impossible for a rabbi to tell the woman that he's helped, that like to refer to her as a daughter, especially depending on age. But it's just this like little inference, right? Like, hey, there's more to me than meets the eye. And you wonder, as she's like looking into Jesus' face as he's saying this, and she was expecting judgment, she was expecting condemnation,
right.
And I'm guessing that he gave her compassion, understanding, maybe even a smile, right? And this thing that nobody could ever do after tests and treatments and money and betrayal and abandonment, Jesus with literally one touch did it and like stopped. And now she doesn't know probably what it's costing him to stop right now,
right.
But all the more there's judgment withheld, compassion extended. Pretty great moment.
And we talked a little bit about shalom yesterday, that Jesus was able to offer the man that had been healed from the demons. We see him clothed, sitting at Jesus's feet in his right mind, feeling this peace. We talked a lot about that yesterday, feeling this peace that he had probably not experienced in quite some time. Well, again, here we see Jesus say, go in peace. Like, I have restored you. And now you have a new life to live.
Yeah, absolutely. So all that's happening. And then usually this is actually more like Mark to write this way. This is a little less Luke. So Luke is really trying to like help us see how these stories overlap each other. And he says in verse 49, well, he was still speaking, like he's having a conversation. And then this happens, all the time, right? Like, you're talking to somebody and then you see a side conversation starting. That's what's happening here. And someone comes up and says to Jairus, your daughter is dead. Basically, don't bother Jesus anymore.
Right.
And so, I mean, in this moment, we have this crazy narrative arc where we've like gone up and then we've got some lowering tension and we've got a conclusion. Everybody's like, oh, fantastic. This is so great. Jesus doesn't even really give her specific instructions about what to say or not say. it's like, just go live your life, like have a great life. And then all of a sudden you have this massive rising tension from what we were doing before. And you just wonder, like, I mean, I think probably Jairus collapses at this point. Like, he's completely overwhelmed. He's been doing whatever he can to try to save his daughter. We don't know if this is like a slow burn where she's had a long time of whatever this is getting worse and worse, or maybe it was one of those things. This was very common in the day where there was some sort of infection that they didn't have medical treatments to be able to solve. And so in the matter of days, she went from perfectly healthy to on the brink of death. And now she's gone. Right. Yeah. And I can't imagine, like, emotionally how
I mean, you have one daughter, right? Like, this is what we're dealing with here.
Yep. And so then Jesus, like, on hearing this, and, like, no matter what's happening with the dad, no matter what his posture is, Jesus, it says, answered him. He's not talking to Jairus. That's like a little interesting thing to look into the text. Jairus hears him, but literally the servant is talking, and Jesus responds back to the servant, do not fear, only believe, and she will be well. Right. Which he's like, dude, you're crazy. Like, and I'm sure that this servant and everybody in Jairus' life saw this for how Jairus had pitched it, which is, this is a last ditch effort. It's worth a shot. Let's just give it a go. And they're probably like, you're going to miss it when she dies, man. You're not gonna be able to say goodbye. You're going to go talk to this crazy rabbi guy that's trying to tear down everything that your entire life is built around. And you're going to miss it. And this is like the big, I told you so moment where the servant's like, well, dude, guess what? She's dead. So how about you stop bothering that guy and go do what you should have been doing the whole time anyway. And Jesus goes, don't worry about it. Just have faith. She'll be okay. That's the conversation we step into. And it's preposterous. If Jesus isn't Jesus, this is a crazy moment that is going to blow up in everybody's face.
I think it's interesting that Luke does not record. And if you want more in this story, both Matthew and Mark also capture this interaction, but there's no response from the servant here, nor from Jairus, which I think is interesting to note, because we're going to see a response from them later, but here we don't see that. They are still moving forward.
Yep. And so then it says, when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him. He's like, let me go in, except Peter, John, and James. That's kind of like in Jesus 12, this was like the inner circle, right? When we talk about a core, this was Jesus' core, and the father and the mother of the child. So if you think about it, there's 6 people that have walked into this room. It's a small room. Everybody else is on the outside. All are weeping and mourning for her. But he says, do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping. Now, keep in mind, the only people that are here in this part of the conversation are those 6 people. This is not a crowd of people. This is not the town. And those 6 people, including Jesus' disciples, the core, the people that have seen Jesus do some crazy stuff, the way that we see this in Greek, they all laughed.
Yeah.
And this is like the kind of laughing with tears, like the kind of laugh, like, what are you doing? This is lunacy. Like, what are you talking about? She's definitely dead.
Right.
But knowing that she was dead, but taking her hand, he called, saying, child, arise. And so literally this little girl, flatlined, dead on her bed. Jairus didn't get to say goodbye. Mom's probably pretty mad that Jairus wasn't there when she breathed her last.
Right.
Peter, James, and John are like, okay, he might have lost it. Like, all this is taking place. And Jesus says, child, arise. That's the prayer. That's it.
And you look at that and you think, I mean, because we see Jesus sometimes like pray to God, right? We see that frequently when he's healing somebody or trying to make a point about something. This is just a command. This is the authority that Jesus has and that he knows he has because of who he is. He's not asking God to do anything right here. He is commanding. And I just think that's powerful. We just saw him call the bleeding woman daughter. We see here that he calls the little girl child. And that would have not been out of the norm. But I just think I like that. The other thing is, if you rewind to, and his disciples saw him do that. So the interesting thing here is that they have forgotten, disconnected, gotten caught up in the emotion of everything that was going on, thought it was a fluke thing, doubted that Jesus could do it. I mean, I don't know kind of where they're at here, but it's so curious to me. I mean, I can understand why the mom and the dad would think he's lost his ever-loving mind.
Yeah.
His three core friends, that's the interesting one for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Greg asks, when Jesus says only believe, is it believe in Jesus or believe that she will be revived? I don't know what it would mean. If it was believe in me, I'd maybe like believe that I can revive her. Maybe I think it's more to have faith that this isn't the end of the story yet.
Yeah.
But this idea of like that, he's not asking them to believe that he's the Messiah because he hasn't even really communicated that, certainly to this group of people. So, I mean, it's all progressive revelation throughout Jesus' ministry about who he is. He's slowly revealing who he is on purpose to create this slow faith so that we talked about that this week already. Robert, would Jesus' commands to the dead to rise again be considered first order actions? I find these instances are similar to the way God saves us from our death and sin. So here's the thing that's interesting, right? When we pray, we are always praying. Jesus taught us how to do this. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this, all the way through. But then Jesus gives us this really unique picture in the Garden of Gethsemane when he says, nevertheless, Father, not my will, but yours be done, right? That's the first time we ever heard Jesus pray that way. And it was at this moment where he was genuinely tempted to go with a different plan. And God's like, cool, sounds good. I'm going to send angels down to minister to you because all the stuff we talked about is the stuff that's going to take to be able to save humanity. And so other than that, the thing that Jesus has going for him is he's living in perfect alignment to the Father. So what he prays, what he commands, what he does is always in step with the Spirit. And so I think for us, the challenge is like, what does it look like for us as we learn more about who God is, as we study his word, as we let the Holy Spirit work more and more in our life, that hopefully as we're praying more and more, we get to see unbelievable things take place. But this is like a peace be still to the storm, like commanding creation kind of moment that it feels like some unique supernatural power in the ministry of Jesus.
And I'm thinking about that section in Luke 7 where it's the widow's son that he raises from the dead. I'm thinking about when he raises Lazarus from the dead. These are instances where Jesus is just making that command.
Yeah. So then we see kind of the lowering tension, right? Because this is all still, like Jesus says this, and I'm sure that this girl's mom, who did not go see Jesus, who's probably pretty skeptical about the whole deal, is like, are you kidding me, man? Like this was the plan. You were going to come in here and tell her my dead daughter to wake up. Like what? But it says her spirit returned and she got up at once. And he directed that something should be given to her to eat. Her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened, right? So we see Jesus' instruction to them similar to the way we've seen it in some really big miracles where he's like, we should probably keep this one between us. Like if this one gets out, like it's probably hard for me to keep a low profile much longer.
Right. Well, and it's the difference, right? Because yesterday we saw a different interaction, right? With the Gentile, we see him say, go tell everybody this, like, God did some powerful things today and you should go share that with your community. And the guy at first he said, no, I just kind of want to hang out with you. And Jesus like, no, you should go and do what I said. Here he's back in Jewish territory. He recognizes that, I actually wrote this down today. He is recognizing that people are viewing their faith through the lens of their politics because they're looking for this political Messiah. And he knows that that's not who he is. He is who they've been waiting for. He's not coming in the way that they want him to. And so he needs to keep a low profile. And I'm always thinking, oh, Jesus, you think this is low profile, raising kids from the dead? But whatever, you be you. But here he's saying you can't tell people, and pretty confident they did.
I mean,
right?
Like, I thought she was really sick. What happened? Oh, like she just got better.
Indigestion. We gave her some crackers and she
Right. Like, really? Like, she seemed like she was super. Well, all right, well, I'll tell you, but like, you can't tell anybody. Like that's how every one of those conversations goes, and they tell everyone. Yeah, but like the feeling of, if you've ever had like a little kid that's sick, like really sick, and like their color looks different, and Jesus doesn't bring her back to the point at which she was hours earlier. She literally gets up out of bed healthy. The reason that she needs to eat is because she probably hasn't had a good meal in a while, right? He doesn't bring back like a sick girl that now has to get well. He makes a dead girl come alive. And
I would say it too, it builds her parents' faith too, right? Because he's saying she's not just alive, she's healthy, and healthy people eat food.
Right.
So,
and like, I'm sure that her parents are like crying and screaming and hugging her and kissing her, right? And Jesus is like, chill out. Like, seriously, like, we got to remember, she was sleeping. Remember I said that out there? Like, that's the story. She was sleeping. She woke up, must have slept it off. That's what we're going with right now.
That's what we're going with.
And like, I mean, and Jesus, 3 guys, Peter, James, and John, who literally just laughed at the prospect that she would come back to life, are probably like, oh, he keeps doing this. Like, maybe he can do everything.
Well, and we're not going to look at it today. We're going to, I think it's next week maybe, or the following week. We're going to look at, it is next week. We're going to look at some interactions with Jesus and his disciples. But as I've been saying, don't forget to look at where we've been, which we've done a good job today, but look at where we're going to. Jesus is going to send out his 12 apostles. That's happening next. Then he's going to feed the 5,000, and we're going to see the disciples doubt him again. And he's going to teach them a pretty powerful lesson.
Yeah, for sure. Jay, this is a great question, man. Doesn't faith require us to act and not doubt that Jesus will answer our prayers? The woman could not act on hope alone. Faith moves God. She acted in faith, which activated Jesus' power to heal. It still applies to us today. So one of the things I say all the time, the opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is fear. God can handle our doubt. Now, there's something that's really important that James, the brother of Jesus, talks about, which is, he says, like, essentially, don't be double-minded. Like, if you're going to pray to God about something, what does it look like to actually lean in practically and trust that God can do that? And I think it's different in every situation, but I don't think it means that we don't have doubts ever. I think it just means that we're honest about them, that we're willing to go like, hey, you know what, Jesus, like, I'm really wrestling with insert challenge, insert obstacle, insert difficulty, belief. This is what I want. One of the most beautiful prayers that anybody ever asks Jesus is, I believe, but help me with my unbelief. And I think a lot of times what we're praying to God is some version of that. I believe you can do this. Would you show me that you will do this, even in the midst of my doubts? And I think sometimes when we pretend in our own heart that we don't have doubt, and we just approach God as though it's like not a thing, God knows. Like, you're not fooling God. So I would just say, be honest, even when there is doubt, that you might not be considered double-minded, that God could show up even in, as you mentioned earlier, kind of the mustard seed of faith, that even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah, that's good.
And then, Greg, always be working to deepen my faith. Yeah, I think that there are areas of our life, right, that feel so big, that feel so important, that feel so impossible, that maybe we're not even praying them. We're not even talking to God about them because they feel like this kind of preposterous. And hopefully what these stories remind us of is that God can bring people back from the dead. Like, he can heal diseases that have existed forever. He can take that relationship that you're thinking about right now that feels irreparably broken and restore it. He can take the hope that you had, the dream that you had for your life that you thought was long gone, and breathe new life into it. And so, I mean, I think for a lot of us, it's just like, where have we decided that we're on our own, that God can't help us, or that he doesn't want to? And obviously, it's not true.
Yeah. Well, I think that verse 50 here really highlights what you say about the opposite of faith is fear.
Right.
It's not doubt, it's fear.
Right. Yep.
And so I think that's an application too. Where are we allowing fear to overwhelm our faith?
And I think that if we if we let ourselves become the crowd, like how many times are we on the outside looking in of what God's doing? We're on the outside of the house while God is in with the daughter healing her, because we have put a different filter in front of our life than faith. And so literally God is like just not showing us what he's doing. He's just not making it visible in our life because we're looking for something else, right? We're looking for political power. I think one of the big things that we're looking for right now in the West is we're looking for comfort. And so we will allow comfort to be the bare necessity. That's the thing that I have to have before anything else. And so Jesus, once I'm comfortable, once I have everything that I need, once there's no emergent issues in my life, then I'll listen to you. And he's like, oh, no, that's actually not how it works. Like, you're with me all the time. So
yes.
Crystal, I'll be reflecting on how God showed up in my moments of deepest desperation and how I should be telling his story because of it. Absolutely. That's good. Well, guys, this is a great passage. I love that you had a chance to connect with us around it today. I hope it's been helpful. Obviously, we're going to continue to study passages like this the rest of this week. If you have something that we can pray for you about, feel free to drop it in the comments, and I will include it here in just a minute when I pray for us. Eileen dropped in one here. She said, if I were Jairus, I imagine that I would have been pretty upset that when my child was on her deathbed, Jesus stopped to heal someone else who was not dying. And then to get the news that my child had died, I just can't imagine the feelings I would have had at that moment. Despite watching Jesus heal a woman right in front of him, Jairus likely had some fear and many other emotions. I don't blame him, though. I would have wondered on the trek back to my house, why did you stop? If you had kept going, maybe she would still be alive now. Do you care about my daughter? And yet his pause was critical, not only to heal the woman, but for the miracle he was about to perform for his daughter. He can't raise the dead if she doesn't die. How often do I let fear wreak havoc on my life, despite the miracles Jesus has done both in my life and in the lives of others? And where am I upset with Jesus because he is making me wait? Ooh. Am I more concerned with Jesus doing what I want to do or him being glorified? These painful situations reveal what my faith is built on and what my priorities are. Phil, at least I need prayers on this one. Yeah, and I think there are so many areas, right, that it's not just that, like a lot of times I think what we're praying, God wants for us. But the thing is, like, we have created a timetable that we're imposing on Jesus, and we're saying, God, I want it right now. And if you don't give me this right now, if you don't give me what I want when I want it, you're actually not loving me. You're actually not giving me what's good for me. When in reality, Jesus might be like, no, you don't understand. There's some stuff you have to experience before that prayer is going to be answered in a healthy way. You might not realize this, but maybe there's some things that you and I are praying for that actually, if we got them, they would be hurtful. They would be detrimental to us. Right. And so, I mean, I think that's a great call out. I mean,
well, and I would say too, are we praying in God's will? Jairus is asking that God heal his daughter, and Jesus is saying, no, I'm going to do even more than that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such an important reminder of the, okay, you know what? God, I need you to kind of like help me be a little bit better. And I think, unfortunately, for lots of people, that's kind of their faith prayer. Like, God, I want you to make me a little bit better. But when we look at what it means to decide to follow Jesus, it's admitting that I'm dead in my sins and trespasses. I'm never going to get to God on my own. That Jesus is the only path by which I can be saved. And so we see a very physical illustration of that right here. Yep. Robert over on YouTube said, if we're afraid, can we no longer act in faith? Does fear lock us out of the light side of the force? No, I mean, I think what fear will often do is it will sort of keep us hostage, right? It will hold us locked in place, and we'll be like, you know what, God, I'm not even going to talk to you about this. It's no thing that we ever do, especially in relationship to Jesus, ever separates us from God. That's not how God works. What it does is we separate from God. So what fear will do is God's ready. He wants to talk to us anytime, but we're like, yeah, God, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you when this is taken care of, when this is taken care of. A lot of times I'll hear people talk about when my life is kind of a little bit more cleaned up, when I get my stuff taken care of. And God's like, no, you're not gonna be able to do that without me. So how about you just, The lie that we believed is that our life was ever put together. The lie that we believed is that we'd ever had it cleaned up. And so what does it mean, even when we're facing our fears, to be able to say, all right, God, I'm going to bring this to you rather than use it to run from you. So, all right. Well, hey, I'm going to pray for us here in just a minute. Really appreciate you guys joining us. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. I don't know what situation it looks like in your life to pray big prayers and to ask God to show up in these kinds of ways, but He's still listening. He wants to be able to show up in our lives in these ways. And even if it means wait, there's something God has for us on the other side. Let's pray together. God, thank you so much. Thank you for the chance to be together, to be able to study your word, to look at these stories of two women, this little girl and this lady who had suffered this disease for 12 years. And to see the way that you cared for the marginalized people that, you know, this little girl in many families at the moment wouldn't have even been named yet. They would have seen if she had survived. And God, we just simply ask that in areas of our life where it's easy to let fear take over, to be able to take things back into our own control, because that's what we do when we're afraid, that we would surrender to you, that we would truly listen to you, that what you want for our lives is what we would want for our lives. Help us, God, as we go today to be able to inject that into every conversation, every situation, and every opportunity. God, we love you. We ask that you'd help all of us to build this patience today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, hey, thanks so much for joining us. Great to see you. We'll see you again tomorrow.